But boy, oh boy, had some technical issues here that today is not the day to be using my screenshot recorder. So the good news is for those of you who do not watch the Facebook, you will not have to put up with my ugly mug when we go to the video. That'll be posted later on the website because can't get the camera to work. So, oh well. It is what it is. What we'll do is I'll be going over some things today that are kind of, it may seem random, but there's just two major points. First off, a shout out to our friends in Virginia and Melody. I don't know if she's watching, but she will see this later, I'm sure. Melody reached out to us and wanted to know what's going on. What are we recommending people look for in the upcoming Virginia elections? And I'm going to touch on that because this is, some of you will think I'm a kook when I talk about these things, but, when you've been doing this for more than a decade, you learn stuff. And one of them is how the bad guys commit fraud. But let me start with a proverb of the day. Today's the 5th of October, and there's a lot in the Proverbs about adultery today, but we're going to skip over that. We're going to talk more about political side of things here, and I really felt like what jumped out at me is something you need to take to heart. Proverbs 5:22. It says, "The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his sin." The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his sin. It means you get caught up in sin, and sin's pretty good until it's not. Now, the way that plays out of what we're doing here today is, in one case, I'm going to tell Virginia, Melody, and our friends in Virginia, some things you might want to look out for with your upcoming elections. They have some very serious elections coming. And then the big deal in North Carolina, and really across America, is how racial gerrymandering is being played out right now in your city and what you can do about it. Because last night we saw how to fight it effectively, and it worked. And it was pretty cool. And I want to just, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but it was, it's effective work and what can happen. I watched a county that fought with this last night, and it was very interesting. I've been in the words of Andy Jackson at NC Civitas, Andy calls himself an agnostic when it comes to gerrymandering. And I kind of like that because I've always looked at gerrymandering or redistricting, depending on who's doing it. When Democrats do it, it's redistricting. But when Republicans do it, it's gerrymandering. It's so evil. Ooh, gerrymandering. And Democrats, oh, we're just redistricting, because you have to. It's fact. You have to. I'll go into some details on that later. Things have changed now, and watching it played out and watching the politics of it, I think it's time to get involved in it. We've always viewed it as just a partisan issue, and the partisans are smart enough to fight it out. I don't know about the rest of the country, but North Carolina, the NCGOP clearly is not up for the fight. So this is going to be up to the grassroots to do anything about it. So this is why I want to show you what you're fighting for. And I'll go ahead and do a spoiler alert here. It is my opinion that the reason the NCGOP doesn't care about it is because they don't care who wins control of the state as long as conservatives don't get it. So they think of it never Trumpers. I mean, Tea Party 2.0 basically is the Trump phenomena, where, but I won't go down that rabbit trail. The point is, the establishment hates Trump and hates Trump's voters so much. I mean, look at what they're doing to us. Look at the personal things they're doing to us to destroy our businesses and whatnot. So they don't care if Democrats win. They just don't want you to win. So if you want to win, you're going to have to help your party. And hey, we're a 501c4, so I'll tell it like it is. Your party, the Republican Party, is fighting for you. Now, we'll throw shade at Republican Party. No, I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. The party itself doesn't give a crap for you, but your best hope is in the Republican Party. At the county level, you may have already taken it over, and I may be wrong in what I just said to you. But at the top level in North Carolina, and until McCain died, really until in Arizona, I mean, it just plays out state to state. South Carolina, I'm sorry. Virginia, you've got some hope. But anyway, the point is your parties don't care about you so much. So if you want to save your way of life, you better get involved in politics. But as we've said, the things the wicked do, I'm going to paraphrase it because I've already set my Bible down. The things the wicked do will ensnare them. And your trick is to be there to catch them when they do it. So we're going to show you what to look for in Virginia, because they're about to ensnare themselves in massive voter fraud. Why? Because it's how they win. So look for that in Virginia. And then the other thing is to what we got to do everywhere about gerrymandering. So on with the show. Now there's a video I'm going to show that is kind of tricky. People on the video podcast on Facebook will not hear it. So I'm going to read it to you. And I'm going to make sure that the audio can be heard. I just don't know how this is going to work. I'm afraid that, let's see, share sound. All right, we're going to play the video, and I'm going to read it to you on Facebook because it is subtitled. And it's a gentleman named Tony Forte.
Parked over the far parking lot.
I'm going to paraphrase part of it. He was parked
van showed
over,
up at the same time I did. I was fumbling around looking for my card, my registration card, and that's when I noticed the gentleman get out and
Tony was over
open the side doors of the van and started helping people get out. And one in particular was a lady with a walker.
Next election, after what he had
pretty elderly, trouble getting around. But, I thought that was a wonderful idea. Here's a group. It turned out it had a sign on the van, something or another, Bethel Church, and obviously helping people get out and vote. Civic-minded thing to do. It was great. Figured the Legion or Police Scouts could do something like that. I like being involved in things like that. But we didn't found out I'm at the wrong place. So people inside are trying to help me figure out where I'm supposed to be. And as that was happening, I watched the lady who walked the door over and we got them touchscreen voting machines and all that. She goes through and votes there, and I finally figure out where I'm supposed to be. And by that time, they had all left. And as it turns out, I'm supposed to be voting over at the W.T. Brown Elementary School, which is just a few miles from here. So I drove over there and I stopped in the parking lot, and in the parking lot was the same van. And as I go inside and make sure this time I'm actually in the right place, I find out that I am. And as I'm waiting my turn to vote, the same people I saw vote here, the same lady with the walker, was just leaving the touchscreen voting machine and heading out. I brought it up to the folks there at the elementary school. And, hey, I'm not sure what I just saw, but I did just watch at least those people vote over at the municipal building. I don't understand how they could be voting here. And they had a registration card for here, and it all seemed in order to us. There's really nothing we can do about it.
Stumbled into the wrong precinct, and as a result, he's standing there waiting and watching, and he's watching these people vote while he's at the help desk, and they're trying to adjudicate the problem. So what does he find out? That these people, that he's at the wrong precinct. As he watches these people, nothing but good vibes. He's watching these people vote. He's seeing them vote. So then finally they adjudicate what his problem is. And they say, oh, listen, Tony, you're at the wrong precinct. You should be voting over at W.T. Brown Elementary. He was at an elementary next door, like a mile away from Brown, because it was a split precinct that had two polling locations very close to each other. He was at the wrong one. So he goes, okay, gets in his car and goes over there, and he goes in the parking lot, and there he sees that same van. Only this time they're there already. So he goes inside, and those same people, including the elderly lady with the walker, they're all in line to vote, and they go in and they vote, and they're handling their ballots, and they're moving around, and he is gobsmacked watching this. And he goes over to the chief polling official, precinct judge and says, hey, I don't know what I'm looking at here, but I know I just saw those people voting at the over at W.T. Brown. And her exact words, I don't know if I'll get it, but I'll have it on the website, to the effect was, there's nothing we can do about it. Their name's all checked out. So what had happened, they weren't voting twice using their same name. They were using somebody else's name. And they did it as a van, and they moved from one location to the other. Now, okay, that was in North Carolina. What does this have to do with Virginia? Virginia, after all, we've got voter ID in Virginia, right? It's a phony, it's a fake voter ID law. But hold on, go Wolfpack. They also have a voter ID law in Georgia, one of the more restrictive voter ID laws in the country, far more restrictive than what's going on in Virginia and North Carolina for that matter. The Georgia law stands as not a very good law, but it's the best we've got because it too allows non-DMV produced, something other than a driver's license or a DMV official ID card. Because those are things that when you go to a car rental place or a decent bar, they're going to pull out their manual and look at it, and they can validate that license. But Georgia, even though their laws are better than Virginia or North Carolina, they too allow certain kinds of fake IDs. What's my point? In Georgia, we have a very credible report in the mayoral race from a couple of years back, Keisha Lance Bottoms, who recently resigned. You want to see some funny stuff, look at Keisha Lance Bottoms, plural. Look at her resignation speech. She resigned from office and didn't tell you why. She was so mad, and it's hilarious. Our guys know why, and it was really funny because it's like, that woman is in so much trouble, and they struck a deal to let her just get out of there. So that she didn't have to get really publicly humiliated and embarrassed. And so it's just the people who worked hard behind the scenes are my friends, and they knew what was going on with it, and they were keeping me abreast of it. And it's some hilarity, but no joking aside, when she got in a couple of years before then, our intel, our people working on the ground there found evidence that 6 people, 3 white and 3 black, had been recruited and groomed. And I mean groomed. They got hotel rooms for them. They shaved them. They were homeless people. They shaved them, cleaned them up, fed them, took care of them. And they shot lots of fake IDs for them. And they went around Atlanta for the mayoral race, not a federal election now, for the mayoral race. And these people voted everywhere. And I wish I had film to prove it. But our source on that, it was single sourced, but sometimes you got to go with it. What do? Do you go into court with it? No. Do you write a story on it? No. But for what we call EFIs, essential elements of friendly information, we think you should act on this, Virginia, because you have a voter ID law very fraud friendly, as does North Carolina. And the easy way to steal elections with a crappy voter, with a fake voter ID law, a fake ID law, is to go ahead and produce these pieces of plastic that get your people a legitimate registration in somebody else's name. Now, what names do they use? Well, I don't know. There's only about around 1 million. Actually, it's down a little bit. I think we're down to about 600,000 in North Carolina right now of people who are inactive and don't know they're on the voter rolls. But there are other people on there who were loaded deliberately by organized criminal efforts. Think labor unions, think NAACP, and think your garden variety. No, your hardcore communist groups like the Ralph Nader group, NC Purge, used to be PIRG back in the day. I think they morphed into Bernie backers, and they probably morphed into those black hooded anarchists you saw last summer. These are your hardcore commies, and for years they've been exploiting our the motor voter, the National Voter Registration Act, and injecting fake voters into the voter roll. Sometimes they get caught. Sometimes you see, like in Virginia, there was a James Madison student who got caught doing it. But generally, I'm not worried about the ones that get caught, because the ones that get caught were stupid. The ones I'm worried about are the ones who did not get caught, and they got the names on the voter roll, and those people are voting. Who's voting for them? Who knows? See, in North Carolina, up until like today, you don't need an ID to vote. You kind of do right now, maybe kind of, but it's a fake ID. It can be a government employee ID card, whatever that looks like. Because government, wow, that means an elementary school. That means the handy soil and water district. I wonder what that ID card looks like. An employee ID card looks like from the handy soil and water district. I wonder if that even exists. What about the isothermal community college? I just like saying that. Yeah, it exists. But I wonder if somebody in Bladen County, if a student walked in with an isothermal community college ID, if that Bladen County employee would know what it looks like. You know, and we have our own fake ID that we've shown people. And we have a great deal of fun showing it around. Yeah, here we go. There we go. There's our guy. His you might note the guy, the picture is Camera Hog. And if I don't know how far I've zoomed in on this, I'm zooming out a little bit. This is a Wake Tech ID card. It's fake. It's a very fake ID card. Looks just like Wake Tech. It's plastic. This is what a student ID card looks like at Wake Tech. We pass these out to lawmakers. I don't know if you can read the back of it, but it says this ID card is fake. How many poll workers would recognize this if they were at the polls? Now, granted, in order to get this ID card, a legitimate law-abiding student would have, oh, by the way, one more thing, note the guy's name. Bo, if you say it fast, you'll get it, Bogus Card. My wife named it. This was a committee build, and the award-winning artist Mark Peterson helped us with some of the artwork on it, but I won't name some of the other conspirators on it, but my wife named it. The point was we pass those cards out because we don't like student IDs, and we think any IDs that are non-DMV, the kind that DMV you have to provide documentation for, anything other than that, a real ID is what those are called. Anything other than a real ID as defined by law, by state law, you're inviting fraud, because none of the employees at the polls are going to know what the acceptable ID cards are, what they look like. And it's a horrible voter ID law everywhere. Virginia, I used to laugh at you until I read our briefing today, because we're in a legal battle over voter ID in North Carolina, and I was reading the legal briefing, and Virginia, I'm sorry, I've got nothing to laugh at you about. North Carolina's voter ID law is just as stupid as Virginia's. And in other ways, it's more stupid. In other ways, it's less. But I apologize for laughing at you guys. Our laws are just as fake and stupid. So what you've got to look out for, Melody, is clusters of voters showing up at once. They'll be in vans. They might even be like in a couple of cars getting out at once and talking to each other. Now, I'm putting this out for everybody, so the bad guys are looking at this going, okay, lose the vans. But who am I? I'm nobody. I'm just some blogger. I don't know anything. So maybe they won't see this. Maybe they won't care. But this is friendly information you can use to go, or as we call it, warnings and indicators. This is a pretty good sign that something's going on. If you see a bunch of people walking in together, and maybe they're talking, especially as they leave, they talk. If they're in separate vehicles, we've gotten very credible reports of people saying where they were going to go next. And if the election employee who heard that had done the right thing, and she was so shocked she didn't know what to do, what she should have done was called ahead to that precinct and said, because she heard them say, okay, guys, now we're going to go over to Lynn Road. And a couple of them heard that and were like, so these people might be voting in multiple places. And then what happened, had she called Lynn Road, they'd have seen them. They walked in with these very flamboyant clothing that, they knew they were going to get away with it. They didn't care. They knew they were getting away with it, and they did. Let's see. So what happens later in the day, in that particular case, they showed up. They came back to her precinct and voted again using different names. And there was nothing they could do because there was nothing they could do. And that's what Larry's deal was about, the video I showed today. I'll have that linked on the Facebook. I'll have it right below there. And if you click on the link we put on later in the day, you'll see it, because I'll make sure you see it. All right, now, so Virginia, look for clusters, and you have to have outside greeters who are paying attention. And if they see that, then you got to you got to figure out what precinct is nearby or listen carefully. You really need eyes and ears around the polls just to hear what's going on. Ultimately, you're going to need witnesses to see them voting inside. But for now, you just want to see the vans as they go. And this is a problem. Now, what you can do, they can't unring the bell in Virginia because the voters don't sign anything. So that's a problem, especially on election day. And this is a big election coming up for Virginia. So your best bet, really, I mean, if I got right down to it, I would look at what True the Vote did. They disclosed a fabulous treasure trove of information on how to track these people. And I'm sure the left saw that. And I'm sure they will train these people to turn off their cell phones when they go in and vote. So we've lost that intel opportunity, but you might look out for that. There might be a way to scan it based on Bluetooth. Just saying. But the real issue is just to catch these people, see them going in, and what do? You have to film them outside surreptitiously because you really don't want them to see they're being filmed. Put your cell phone in your pocket and just have the camera sticking out, run the video and film them. That's one way to do it. Another way is just to be hidden in a car, but you've got to catch these people going from precinct to precinct, and you'll need somebody to be inside or go inside and watch them vote. And you got to figure out a way to do that, because the only way you're going to overthrow your election is to show that this happened so widespread that it tainted the election. And you need to have another one with federal observers coming in, maybe. I don't know. It's going to be tough. Virginia, in my view, that's the best bet you've got at this point. There's things you can do elsewhere, but right now, with your election in the first Tuesday in November, this is all you got. And for those of you not in Virginia, you got to understand, or like in North Carolina, they're having a North Carolina election, an even year election, except there's no federal races on the ballot. The beauty is, at the state level, the fraud is a lot easier to do. When it's federal, the penalties are higher, but at the state level, like these municipals that we have coming up in North Carolina, it's a lot easier to commit fraud. And they destroy the evidence 30 or 60 days after the election, as opposed to the federals where they keep it for 22 months. So it's just local is where North Carolina's problem is. And I'm going to transition into local now. Virginia, that's the best I got for you. Warnings and indicators, look for clusters of voters showing up. And hopefully you've got some employees on the inside, because it's too late to get them in there now. But ultimately, I would say get your employees in there. And we'll talk about that later, because it's too late to discuss that now. All right, changing gears. Gerrymandering or redistricting, which is it? I'm not sure what to call it these days. It depends on who's doing it. And we have a case example because I got to see it up close and personal in Lee County. I'd always been an agnostic, not caring about this gerrymandering thing. Need to make a configuration change on my computer. So bear with me. I'm going to go back to my mic to make sure people hear me on the computer instead of, I'm not sure what they heard. So I want to make sure I'm miking up now. Your sound will be better if you're watching the PowerPoint later in the day. What we had, there was this nifty little district. There's 4 county commission districts in Lee County. And one of them is what they call a minority majority district. That's something that was carved out because of the Voting Rights Act. Legitimate. I don't mean to throw shade at the Voting Rights Act. It was an excellent law that was badly needed. That was passed in the mid-60s. Here we are 50 years later, and the crooks have figured out ways to shoot the gaps, to shoot for the loopholes and game the federal law. This is the way it happens. Because federal law is so slow to change that as soon as it passes, the bad guys in all 50 states go, okay, how can we subvert this law? And they figure out ways to subvert it. And if a state develops a really good way to do it, they export it to other states. But enough about California. The redistricting in California, that's what we're seeing here, is they've taken the Voting Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and all the court cases that have followed from it. And they've figured out ways to rig the district so that Democrats could take over the state, just like they took over California. Now, depending on how deep you are down that vortex that's destroyed California and is working to destroy Virginia, especially because they passed the nonpartisan redistricting commissions in Virginia, which is, that's it. That's the end of the game. Once they start doing that, yeah, you're way further down that drain. But y'all just passed it last year. You haven't, I don't think you've implemented it yet, but we'll see. The point is, they figure out ways to game it. And the game this year is racial gerrymandering. There's no other way to call it. Now, but the focus, I'm going to use the example, the minority majority district. That's a polite way of saying a district where the blacks have the majority. Minority majority district is so much more academic because it kind of plays, it's fair. I mean, those words can be used against the people gaming it. That's what happened last night in Lee County. Very interesting, but not those words. Anyway, other words like that. Now, what you have in Lee County, you've got population-wise, the way things currently are, the precincts are fairly close. District 1, the minority majority district, is the smallest. It's got roughly 14,000 when the other districts have 15, 16, and 17. So you see a little bit of a disparity there. And the smallest is the minority majority district. It's kind of the inner city and then places out. But it's funny because it's got these two little devil horns that stick up. I mean, you look at the map and you just laugh. You know, it's gerrymandered. It's like, there's no way this was not gerrymandered. Oh, I'm sorry, redistricted. It was racial, and it's been that way for a long time. And that's true with all redistricting, because at the end of the day, redistricting is about votes. So anytime anyone tells you it's not, they're lying to you. They are lying. And that's, so what's happened is in 2016, originally, the North Carolina districts got thrown out because it was all about the votes. Well, you did it all about the votes. You disenfranchised these people. And so the head lawmaker in it, David Lewis, decided, well, fine, you don't want it about the votes, then we'll do it about race. So he overtly said, make it about race. And he did it in writing, and those words hung him. Oh, you cannot do it about race. And the left conned Clarence Thomas into going along with their majority. This is a 4-4 court because Scalia had already died. And because of that, it was a 4-4 court. And so what happens? They got under Clarence Thomas's skin, so to speak, and he went to their side, and it was a 5-3 ruling that you've got to halt these elections right this second because that was too much racial. No, it was racial. It was, look at Lewis's words. It was all about race. So they killed it, or they halted the election. It was really funny because Renee Elmers is about to get primaried out by a guy named Jim Duncan, who had raised $2 million to beat her in a legitimate primary. And there were a couple other people primarying her too, but there weren't enough to prevent the obvious that the Tea Party people and the Republicans in North Carolina District 2 had figured out Renee Elmers, and they hated her guts and they wanted her out. But her next door neighbor was that same guy I mentioned earlier, David Lewis. Literally, at the time, they lived right next door to each other in Harnett County. So conveniently, the Supreme Court ruled in and threw out those districts in the middle of the election. The filing period had already been over. The absentee ballots had already been started being mailed. The ballots are already being returned. And then they went, halt. There's too much racism. This was racial gerrymandering. And therefore, the courts had the authority to step in, and we're going to step in. Okay, the court stepped in. They halted the election midstream and made them do another one because it was racial. The gerrymandering was racial. Bad. Now, as a side note, it's just kind of entertaining that when David Lewis redrew the districts, every single challenger that had filed and was running against Renee Elmers in that race, every single one of them just happened coincidentally like to be no longer in Renee's district. It's funny how that worked. Just a coincidence. And the guy who drew the maps lived next door to Renee, but there was no politics there. No, no, no. Anyone who says there is itching for a fight. So just one of those fun facts, just a coincidental. So redistricting cannot be about politics, right? The Supreme Court goes in there and they halted the election because it was race. Okay, that was in 2016. I think in the words of Mickey Dolenz, that was then, this is now. So what happens? 2020, 2021, I guess, 5 years later. It's all about race. It's all about that race, about that race. No voters. So in Lee County, the way this worked for our minority district, or is it majority district? Anyway, the way it worked was Plan A. This was the plan I watched last night as 3 Democrats wanted this plan. And if you look at it, I'm just going to describe it to the Facebook friends, but you really ought to check out the video. But I can describe what the real issue is if you don't get to see the video. Think of it as at a rock concert. You go, ah! This is Plan A for the majority district, and a big number that it's worth. Oh crud! My bill didn't happen. The big number on it was 5,000 Black voters in this district. So the district was much of downtown Sanford, and these 2 little devil horns to go up, and that way they could gerrymander it to get, redistrict it to get just the right mix, so the Democrats would always have that district. And because there's 5,000 Blacks and 4,500, it's 32% Black, 30% white, and 35% other. So it's basically 3 ways. I think Hispanic is probably the other, but then they talk about Hispanic versus minority. It's just all confusing because it's 40% and 70%. They say 40% Hispanic, 70% minority. So it's like, you got to do the math, and I don't want to do that to you today. I want you to get the big picture. 5,000 Black voters. And why should we care? Because they have drawn this, and literally the plans they drew 4 plans initially, and all 4 plans had the racial breakdowns of these precincts. But they conveniently did not have the partisan, what's the D plus what, the R plus what. They didn't have that. And the map maker, GIS guy, he's some bureaucrat who unaffiliated, but he votes Democrat. He flies under a unaffiliated flag, which is about as hypocritical as I fly under unaffiliated flag, and I vote Republican, except for that once. But anyway, this guy, he's a Democrat map maker who identifies as unaffiliated. He drew all these maps without looking at any partisan divides in this, any partisan impact. It's all about race. I was like, what? Well, I thought that was, 5 years ago, that was bad. And now 5 years later, that's all it is. It's all about race, because Justice Ginsburg in that ruling coined this cool little phrase that's code for race. It's called communities of interest. And communities of interest means any kind of racial group we can figure, or language group that we can figure out, except in California, where one of the communities of interest was Vietnamese. And they had to split that community of interest because the Hispanic community of interest, they were Democrats and the Vietnamese were Republicans. So they cut the Vietnamese group in half so that Loretta Sanchez could have a nice, tight congressional district that she could win in because she was Hispanic. So it's all just lies. It's politics by another name. And if you're too stupid not to see it, that's what they're counting on. So I'm trying to educate you so you'll know, because you're going to need to go to your county commission meetings to see how they're doing this. In fact, I wouldn't wait for the meetings. I would go now and look at the maps, because you're late to the game. You really are. If you're looking at this now, this game is going on without your knowledge. And now you got to understand that. See, Lee County, it's a 4-3 Republican Democrat mix. So it just so happened that all 4 of these plans that unaffiliated map maker had done, all 4 of them just coincidentally created another Democrat district and took away a Republican district. Just it's coincidence. It's all about race, not about politics. No, 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 no. Nothing to do with politics. No, 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 no. Yeah. It's all about politics. So the Republican commissioners, they found some doctor and they worked with this doctor. I had to ask around. I was like, who is this doctor? And it was really funny because they presented another map last night. And fur blue, because you had all these maps that all just happened. Not that anyone could talk about the 800-pound gorilla over in the corner. Okay, somebody's calling me, and I don't know if you can hear them calling or did it halt the live feed. This is an experiment I need to do. And when I do, I will know what to do about this. But right now we have a problem because I'm using my phone for Facebook and it causes a problem. So I paused the desktop briefing. As I was saying, I had a brief interruption there. Okay, you had 5,000 Black voters in District A, and all these plans just happened to draw the same kind of plan that kept District 1 rather, Plan A, District 1 had that same power base in Little Sanford. And I didn't know who was who in the zoo. I came to this meeting kind of just watching and wondering. I was mad that they used race as a criteria, and I got up and spoke to that effect. But the funny thing about it was that this little devil-shaped this map, Plan A, I didn't know which was the right plan until somebody said, make a motion that we adopt Plan A. Okay, here we go. I guess Plan A is good then. And then it failed, 3-4. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess those 3 are the Democrats and those 4 are the Republicans. Because I don't care what they tell you about redistricting or gerrymandering, it's all about politics. It is a fact our founders knew about, and they wanted accountability. So they wanted elected officials to be accountable. That's what we need. Commissions are bad. What that is politicians shirking their responsibilities, and then they can rig it the way they want to behind the doors. And then when the voters figure it out, they go, hey, I didn't know. I had no control over it. And it'll take 50 years to unsort that or unscrew that. And they know it. And but enough about California, enough about Virginia. We just want to avoid that in North Carolina. Now, here's the thing about it. This is what's so galling about it, where Plan A, I gave you those numbers a while ago that I'm sure you do not remember, but I think I'll back up and just show it here if I can get my screen to respond. District 1, it was basically 14, 15, 16, and 17. Those are the different districts as far as 14, it was like 14,800 people. These are all populations. Basically, between 15 and 17,000 people in each district. So population-wise, the baseline plan, they were originally okay. So in Plan A, they said, well, it's all about population and race, but race first, then population. Population. That was a big deal. So it was, the deviation was very slender. It was, gosh, how to describe it? Basically, all of them were at 15,000 and one of them was at 16, basically. So they were a little closer in population-wise. Voter-wise, it's really funny because District 1, this is where it really gets criminal, in my view. District 1, the majority district, had 6,000 voters, just registered voters. The other 3 districts each had between 9.5 and 11.5. So roughly an average of 10,000 or 10.5, right around 10,000 voters in each of these other districts. But District 1 had 6,000. So, so we write a majority district in a county that doesn't have the numbers to back it up. So we're going to make race everything here. But here's a problem. See that they have 4 districts. I don't know if you see those numbers, but there's 4 districts here. And each of those districts they get to elect one. I don't know how we get to 7, but they each, I guess maybe there's some at large or something, I don't know. But each of those districts get to elect one commissioner. So one count, the highest district, 11,500, their vote, each vote is 1 divided by 11,000 roughly. And in District 1, their vote is 1 divided by 6,000. So you do the math, you can talk dilution of voting. The courts don't care. They're deaf to that term, so I won't say it. But there's another term we used to always care about called one person, one vote. And the way that plays out in the federal has always been one voter. You have to, if you could take a voter from District 1 or District 1, you gotta add a voter somewhere else. There's a yin and a yang to it, and you have to have with the federal districts, it has to be a 1 for 1, and with the state, it has to be it can go as high as 6% in North Carolina and still be within that. The problem is the distortion of non-citizens. So when you have a population of 15,000 and you have roughly 9,000 who are either black or white, and you've got 6,000, actually it says 6,000 Hispanic. Am I saying all Hispanics are illegal? No, I'm saying that for some reason, a lot of people live in that district but don't vote. You can draw between the lines, whatever it is. My assumption would be that that's where the illegal, the undocumented aliens are. This is illegal immigrants. This is where they live. And they live in, like everybody, we live in clusters of housing with people, with friends. We want our friends as neighbors. And if you decide your neighborhood is too hostile, you move. You don't like it for whatever reason, you move and you go find a neighborhood where people are more like you. It's human nature. You see it in birds of a feather flock together. You know the deal? Okay, so what that means though is 6,000 voters in one district, 10,000 in another. It throws one person, one vote out on its ear. It just throws it out. Who cares? That's old. And in that ruling where Clarence Thomas got manipulated, they didn't even talk about one person, one vote. They didn't mention it, the entire ruling. They didn't even address it. Race, it's all about that race. So there we go. That's the game they're playing is by ignoring the voting numbers, ignoring the voter numbers. They're able to figure out a way to rig it where it just so happens that Democrats pick up a district, just coincidentally. Now, what happened last night was the Republican commissioners, they partnered with the doctor and they drew some more maps. Only the Republicans, they met the criteria of the plan, and they beat the Democrats at their own game because they got rid of that little Diablo. Remember those devil horns? They actually filled those horns in, and that was a huge issue. Think like that. They filled that gap in, but they pulled it out of District 2. In District 2, there are a majority Republicans. Now, there's 2,000 Black people in District 2, but the district itself tends to vote Republican. So the lone Black, I can't think of his name now, the lone Black commissioner last night, I want to say Gaines, I think it was Gaines, but I don't want to keep saying the Black guy, but Gaines, he saw the numbers and he said, how many people are being pulled out of that district 2? How many people are being pulled out of that area up here? It's a big area, it goes up here. And what they did was close it in. So they moved those voters into this district to close it up and make it more like this instead of like devil horns. And in doing that, Gaines asked the question, well, how many people are you moving? They said 600 people. He goes, that's not good. That doesn't help District 1. That's bad. That's bad. And they were going, well, how is that bad? He goes, well, these are Republicans. You're moving them from a Republican district into District 1. That's not right. And whoa. We don't know what they are. how would that be bad? And it was merriment and mirth because the Democrat was put in the corner because they were saying it's not about politics. Oh no, oh no. Then as soon as the Republicans drew a plan that actually addressed their politics and still met the criteria of the redistricting. I mean, it's just, and they actually got buy-in from a law firm in Raleigh that's kind of micromanaging all these across the state, going, yeah, it was called Pointer and Spruill. They're going, yeah, we won't sue them that. They don't say that, but they go, I don't think this will attract litigation. That's kind of what they say. I guarantee you, people in Lee County are screaming today to threaten to sue, and they're lobbying Pointer and Spruill to file a lawsuit there. That's the way the game is played. It's all lawfare. It's all in the courts because the legislatures gave the courts the authority instead of telling the courts to pound sand or something. They just said, well, okay, the court said this, so we got to do it. No, the Constitution says, legislature, this is your gig. And if the voters don't like it, they can vote you out. But by giving the courts that camel's nose under the tent, this is what happens. Now the whole thing will be fought out in the offices of Pointer and Spruill in Raleigh to decide if they can win a lawsuit on it. That said, it was really funny last night because the guy who was supporting this district hated this district because it added 600 voters from a Republican majority district. Well, demographically, the people that were brought in are not a whole lot different than the people who live in the city of Sanford. In other words, there's probably a lot of Black folks that got moved in. I haven't seen that plan yet to see what the racial number was. However, they did discuss it. And what they found was the number dropped, the Black representation in District 1 dropped. Oh my goodness, it went down. Oh no, went down from 70% to 69%. Or it might have been from 71 to 70. It went down 1%. And the reason that was a big deal was because the Naval Academy graduate, one of the commissioners, a white guy, a Republican, said, well, it just dropped 1%. That's not really significant. And for the minority district to have the minority drop by 1%. And Reeves wasn't having it, or Graves or whatever, the Black Democrat, angry guy. He goes, well, you're not a minority. And sadly, the Republican missed his opportunity. He could have just said, meaning what? And made the guy explain himself, meaning what? What does that mean? Instead, he said, well, I'm just saying 1% doesn't seem significant, but I'm just saying you're not a minority. And they let it go at that. And that's sad. They should have had, I wish they'd gotten into the record exactly what that means. Does that mean my opinion doesn't count? Hey, I'm losing people in the district north of you. I don't know how they vote. That I'm sure we'll find out. And then depending on how they vote, we'll decide whether or not, I mean, really what it comes down to is that a county that has a majority Republicans and conservative unaffiliateds, and I mean, it's three groups. There's Democrats that are majority party. Then there's a whole lot of disaffected Democrats who don't have the guts to vote to register Republican. And then you have Republicans. And the way it works is a lot of those gutless Democrats, they switch to, I mean, they're gutless Republicans. I love them. Don't get me wrong. You could call me one because I'm registered unaffiliated myself. But anyway, they ride the middle and they pick ballots. And this county is conservative. There are a lot of refugees from Wake and Chatham too, believe it or not, that are coming over to Lee because they don't like the politics, especially in Wake. It's so uber leftist now. It's like, leave while you still can if you live in Wake County. I hate to say that, but anyway, I did. So I'm trying to validate my own behavior. Okay, the point is, this county is trending conservative. And the lawsuit will probably happen because their plans were thwarted in getting and creating another Democrat district, even though the plan meets the criteria. And at least initially, the law firm that kind of the big Democrat, think Perkins Coie in North Carolina, that's Pointer Spruill. So you look at that and you go, okay, Pointer and Spruill signed off on it. But even that's debatable because there were comments that people quoted Pointer and Spruill on both. And it's just really funny because as soon as the Democrat flipped the tables and started talking about, well, these are Republicans that came in here, the Republicans, they knew what to do. They said, well, why does that matter? I thought partisanship, we're not looking at that. We're just looking at population. We're looking at districts that don't have illogical lines, which is this district had illogical lines, and they actually met the criteria better than what the Democrats had done by closing in that area and making it a more contiguous district where your neighbor, there wasn't some imaginary line drawn right down your neighborhood that separated you into different precincts. So people with common values were able to stay together. But this throwback to the 60s, I'm sorry, he just seemed racist to me by saying, well, you're not a minority. Like, you're not black, shut your mouth. It struck me as hate-based. And part of the problem that there were and are lots of white people who respect minority rights. What they hate is racism. And I'm among them. What I see is racism the other way. I hate that too. I hate racism. I hate it both ways. And this is what that virulent 60s group that gamed the system to get what they wanted. This is what that group has to see. Is that you, in doing that, you really you kind of date yourself out. Yeah, we need black candidates in that district, but we need new blood. We need new mindset. What's best for the district, not what's best for black people. What's best for these neighborhoods. And if the candidate happens to be black, great. And that's probably what will happen or Hispanic, really, the way things are going in that district. Who knows? But the point is, by making it all about race and building racial divide, you actually, you look what happens. Look around you and see what happens. It's the Obama effect. Instead of unifying, making us the United States, he said no red states and blue states. Yeah, it's black and white states now, and it's wrong. And it's all because of the racism that we're not allowed to acknowledge, which is hating white, basically. All right, now I'm going to get to some math on this and show Plan A. What it would have done that made the Democrats like Plan A was there were more black voters in there. Now, it raised it to 5,000, and the new plan that they adopted last night lowered that number by 600 black voters. No, not even that. 1%, that'd be 50? 1%. 10% of 5,000 is 500. So 1% is 50. So it lowered black representation by 50 in that district, roughly. Again, I haven't seen the numbers, but it added Republicans. I think they were black. If you only lower the black representation by 50, then you don't have much of a problem there. Okay, now I'm taking in the weeds in Lee County for a purpose, and I'm going to back out now and say, what's the so what? I've already handled the Virginia issue and voter impersonation. But as far as gerrymandering goes, you guys really all across the country, anybody who shares this, if you can stomach looking at a video this long, the issue is the new ploy by Democrats to steal districts is to play the race card. And it's all about race. They're playing the race card, and they claim very piously they're not looking at politics. They are. It's just they are. They're just lying to you. They are lying to you. What you need to do is look at the criteria, and you can beat them at their own rules, because they are actually, when you look at those districts that they had planned on, it still had the little devil horns in it. And one of the big criteria is to do away with stuff like that and make it more contiguous. You can beat them at this game because they're the ones who are gerrymandering. They're the ones who are rigging the districts to get what they want out of it. And it's only when you catch them that it's now projected upon you as gerrymandering. But hey, by making it all about race, they have taken that card off the table. They can't say you're racially gerrymandering. What the Republicans figured out, the doctor helped them, they figured out a way to barely touch race, but they still got one that maintained the will of the Republican majority of this county. And that's what you ought to look at in your gerrymandering, because I guarantee you the Democrats are doing it and they're saying it's not about that. They're lying. It's all about race. You can beat them at their game. I'll say it one last time and I'll get out of here. You can beat them at their lying game. You can beat them at it by looking at their own rules and following their rules better than they do. Beat them at their own rules. That's a Saul Alinsky tactic. And it comes back to Proverbs 5:22. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare them, and he is held fast by the cords of his sin. Last night, I watched a county commissioner get ensnared by his own piety on the deal about politics. Because as long as they had a majority, they were looking like, like priests saying that this is not about politics. And then as soon as the political side figured them out and beat them at their own game, it suddenly flipped and it was all about politics. So you got a pretty good chance of beating them if you dig into this. My recommendation for you is to run, get your party chairman, if you got one, is worth a darn, and go with your party chairman, go down to the county commission, look at these maps and figure out what's going on. Unless a county like Wake County, where there is no Republican Party, I mean, basically they've seated the only county-wide office is some rhino who ran for soil and water district, and that's it. So anyway, that was a throwaway insult that I wish I hadn't said, but yeah, never mind. Get in there, look at these maps, and you'll see how they're doing it. And you might be able to get some of your rights back. In Wake County, you got a bigger problem because nobody on the commission cares about you. So I don't know. I got nothing for you, man. The deal is Granville, Johnson, Lee, Harnett. You want to stop the cancer of Wake County from spreading. And the way you stop it is by paying attention to these maps. Because if they have their way, they'll rig a majority Democrat county commission, even if your county is like Lee County, where it's a right of center county, but they had rigged a way to do it by using race and not politics. So they're liars. You can beat them at this game. I'm getting redundant and I stop. So have a blessed day. And I don't know, remember the wicked, they will be caught. You have to be patient and you have to find them, catch them at their own game, and you'll succeed. All right, have a blessed day. Jay Delancey. Oh, I didn't go to the date today or anything. So started in it. This is October 5th. This has been Vote Checker Update, and have a great day. Oh, this is awkward. I hate the way this thing is, but one day we'll have it right.